Hey everybody, let's go ahead and get started. I'm David Ferguson, here to give you a quick 30-minute demo of Yurbi. Well, not too quick. We're actually going to cover a lot, and I hope to leave some time for Q&A at the end. Couple logistical things before we jump right into it. I've got like maybe 3 slides, and then we're going to jump right into a product demo. So please don't think I'm going to bore you with a bunch of slides here. I also want you to ask any questions that you have. So in the little chat bar that you see in big marker, you can enter any questions. In fact, if you look at the chat, there's a Q&A tab right next to the chat. So you can actually enter your questions there. And myself or someone on our team will be taking a look at that and hopefully answer those. If we don't get to them all, we will definitely email you personally and make sure we give you the answer. So definitely put any questions that you have in that chat widget or in the Q&A section of the chat. So first thing about Yurbi, quick thing about Yurbi is our goal with Yurbi, and if you aren't familiar with where we get the name, it's your business intelligence. It's designed to be BI that's designed for business users, for end users. But what we've made sure is to combine security and power that you find in more of the enterprise tools and at more medium and large size businesses and software vendors who are looking to embed this inside their applications. All the things that they're demanding, we also have that built into a single seamless platform. We like to say that we combine the ease of self-service BI with the security and power of the enterprise BI tools. Now, I won't go into this slide. I mean, you're here for a reason. You've got some use case. I'd love to know more. So if you want to put in a chat message on your use case or reach out to me directly after the webinar, I'd be happy to talk about your particular use case. But I will go over this because there tends to be three top types of use cases or business needs that we find that users are looking for when they come and take a look at Yurbi. First one being ease of use. You know, you might already have a tool that's more complicated. You might have a legacy tool, business objects or SSRS, or you might even be using some of the modern tools like Tableau or Power BI and just found that they're a little bit too much for your business users and it's requiring too much of your IT's time and attention to use that. So we find a portion of our customers are looking for an easier tool, one that doesn't require direct access to the database or knowledge of SQL programming and those sorts of things. So I'll show you that in the demo. You'll definitely see the ease of use today. The other category is data security, and this falls into a couple different areas. Definitely businesses, internal business use case. You know, part of the problem with giving data to your end user is it's protected information. It's data that you don't want to leak out. You don't want to expose information that they should not see. So there's a field level or a data level of security that is required before you open up that database or that application. From a multi-tenant software provider, uh, essential that you never let other customers see other tenant level information within your product. So we'll cover that use case. We'll talk about the Yurbi features related to data security. And then the third category are, as I mentioned, these software vendors and software as a service provider, either hosted or on premise, that are looking to embed dashboards and reports inside their inside their application. And this comes in a couple different methods. You might just be looking to embed dashboards and reports. You may be looking to make the entire building environment possible so that your end users can build their own reports. And as I mentioned, you may be wanting to package it up and deploy it with your solution on premise on your customer locations. So between those three use cases, hopefully you fit into one of those. Feel free to put a message in the chat widget and let me know which one that you focus most on, and I can kind of gear my demo that direction. And definitely, if you have any questions about those, let me know as well. Now, what we're going to cover today, and the key thing to know about Yurbi is it is a complete platform, seamless, all web based. Now, it does require a server. We'll talk about that in a second from an infrastructure perspective. But within our application, you'll find that we have, we're going to talk about dashboards, and we're going to talk about all the features of our dashboard. We're going to talk about how users can slice and dice data and have a little bit more control over their data. And that's where the your business intelligence concept comes in. There's that ad hoc report building, so you don't need to know SQL. We're going to go over our report builder in some detail today. And then there's all sorts of other things that we might not get into in a 30-minute compressed demo, but there's scheduling via email and exporting, and it's responsibly designed so it'll work on your mobile devices and tablets. I mentioned the multi-tenant security. I'll show you a little bit of security. You might have more than just one database. You might have multiple databases, and you want to join data between those databases. We won't get into that today, but Yurbi has that capability. And there's things like multilingual support and multi-time zone support. And from an integration perspective, everything that you're going to see me do in this demo, there's an API behind the scenes that you can programmatically use to automate those functions, from user provisioning to those sorts of things. That's very important from an OEM perspective. So definitely, tell me what your use case is, and I'll focus in on those areas. Now, last thing I want to cover before we jump right into the demo is just sort of the architecture and the infrastructure of Yurbi. We are a .NET application, which means we do require a Windows server on the back end. That could be in your internal data center, Azure, AWS, Rackspace. I mean, anywhere you can get a physical or virtual Windows server is fine. Typically it says 2012 on this slide, but 2016 and above is preferred. At least 4 gigs of RAM, and the more RAM you have, the better. One of the most important aspects of the Yurbi server is the CPU, specifically the clock speed. So we want to have we would prefer a CPU with more clock speed than a CPU with more cores. That's going to be important for the performance of Yurbi, and we can give you server recommendations at a later date. Now, when you install Yurbi on that Windows server, it will leverage IIS, and all of the end user and client access is going to be through the web browser. So there's no desktop components or apps on the phone or anything like that to download. Now, the other key, once you install that server, Yurbi itself has a database. So, of course, Yurbi is going to connect and report live from your database. And that could be anything: SQL, Oracle, MySQL, PostgreSQL, all your, Redshift, RDS, all the Amazon ones, Azure SQL. We've got that covered. You can also import CSV and Excel files. But Yurbi also has a backend database, and while we don't copy and store your data in that database, it's pretty critical because we store all the Yurbi metadata, the report definitions, the user provisioning, the security, and things like that. And out of the box, we embed a PostgreSQL, so that's fine for most organizations. If you do happen to have a Microsoft SQL database in your environment, then we recommend that you use that, because that's going to fall right into your backup and recovery strategies, and it's probably also be a little bit more robust for production level loads. And then you can even install Yurbi on a desktop. That's generally just for trial purposes. You could use SQL Express if you wanted to do it, where in the future you wanted to copy it into your production SQL environment. But you could install on Windows 10, and as long as you have administrator privileges to activate IIS and do some of the things that we require. But again, that's just for trial. Yurbi is a server application. All right, let's go ahead. I'm going to switch to my screen, and we're going to start right into the product demo. Hang on one second. Okay, so you should be seeing my screen now, looking at the Yurbi dashboard. If you don't, please put in a chat message and let me know if you're having any issues seeing my screen. But I just logged in, and now I'm logged in as an admin, so we can quickly switch between all the features here. You'll notice in the header bar, we've got the concept of a home, which is our dashboards, a library, where you'll see there's a report repository of all the reports that you have built. The builder, that's that ad hoc report building environment we talked about. Architect, and if I look under my name here, you'll see some more stuff like the admin panel, my profile, my schedule, reset pin, and things like that. So we'll go through this pretty quickly, but The key thing to know about Yurbi is it's very role based and security based. And the roles we have are agents, which are you could think of as your view only users. They're going to have these first two tabs. They can have view only access to dashboards and reports. Then you're going to have the concept of a builder role. They're going to have these first three tabs. They're going to be able to build reports as well as save them in the library and build dashboards. Even a view only user could build dashboards. We'll show you that in a second. And then you're going to have the concept of an architect. We'll talk about what this architect does when we look at this tab. And then lastly, you're going to have the concept of an admin. So within your organization, you can assign the right role to the right people. They're going to have the right permissions to do things within Yurbi. And you can also then assign data level permissions in terms of what they see. So the key thing with Yurbi is while we're looking at this dashboard, you'll notice that there's three series of data on this dashboard. Another person might look at the same dashboard, maybe another tenant within your application or another department within your company, and they'll only see their data reflected in this same dashboard. You don't have to recreate dashboards just for security reasons. Now, the concept of our dashboards is to be interactive. So as a user looks at this dashboard, you'll see I can hover and see information. I can click to drill down into a target report where I could see more detail, or maybe I click to another chart and drill down from there. So there's lots of different possibilities with the drill down. I can also zoom into each of these reports on the dashboard to kind of see them in a larger scope. But when I zoom in, I've got the ability to get to raw data. I've got the ability to export and print, as you can see here. And I also have the ability to change the presentation of this chart by going into a chart wizard. And at the individual user level, they have the power, again, your business intelligence, to kind of change their title. Maybe they want to actually print the actual numbers on there. Maybe they want to put a constant line. I'll put 100. I can't remember what that data series looked like on this one. And you'll see that they'll get a preview of that. And now they've been able to modify that chart to be more of what they want it to be, where they could then print it or export it for their purposes. They don't have to go back to the report builder to do those level of personalizations. You'll notice I can scroll and these dashboards can go horizontal, vertically as much as I want. And even within our data grids on the dashboard, I can quickly filter at the dashboard level. You'll see that this is a date filter, which gives me a date hierarchy that I can quickly go in and filter to. Or if I zoom into this data grid, I've got the ability to quickly filter. You'll see this is more of a text-based filter. Let's look at a numeric one. You'll see things like less than or equal to. And I can also drag and drop and start to group. So this is that slicing and dicing we talked about. You'll notice as I do this, all this data, once it's rendered on the dashboard, is in the browser memory. So these sorts of actions occur pretty quickly. Now, as a user, there's a couple things I can do on this dashboard. I can drill down, I can slice and dice. You'll notice that the user can have as many of these dashboards as they like in their favorite component. They can also search and find other, and we'll talk about the library in a second, but it makes it really easy for them to kind of have their favorites and switch between. You'll see they can also create their own. So there's a lot of power within this dashboard. And from an embedding perspective, you can embed this entire dashboard, the whole inner frame of what we're showing inside of your application, or you can also embed the individual reports as well. Now, one of the really nice features of our dashboard is that as you build these dashboards, you can package up what we call save views. And these save views are sort of like filter sets. So, for example, if I click on this view, you'll see it just added a filter here called on the business field, and it's defaulting to one of my business units, in this case called aviation. It's going to re-execute this dashboard, and now you'll see that I'm looking at that same dashboard, but only for the business unit aviation. And as a user now, I can click here and get a drop down listing of all my business users and make that change. So you can package up these views with your dashboard, but you can also have your individual users go in and build their own filters. So maybe they want to come in and build a text-based filter around category. Let's associate category with all of our filters here. So you'll see I've got 4 widgets or 4 reports on this dashboard. What's powerful about this is each of these reports could come from different databases. As long as the data is related, this is fine. I'll name this filter category. I'll create a criteria and say I'm looking for all the categories that are related to, let's pick a good one here. I think I've got a lot of data related to accessory. Let's add that one. If not, we can change it. But you'll see that now I've added that filter. It's going to turn that on in addition to the aviation filter. And it's going to start to give me what I have. And I picked a bad one in this case. But you'll see I can easily go in and switch that out. Let's take a look at maybe application based. But the concept is each user now can build their own filter sets or leverage their own views, and then they have the ability to save this as their own view at that point, which would show in their list. So you do have the concept of business delivered views as well as individual saved filters and view sets. And great use cases for this is when you want to look at things by customer or department or time range, a date range, and anything like that. So that's one of the more powerful features within Yurbi. Now I'm going to switch because we are in a compressed demo. I'm going to switch out of the dashboard. I want to show you the library quickly and show you how you build some of these. The library is going to be the place where you store all these reports that you add into that dashboard. Very robust capabilities in the library. You can set up your public library by any structure you want, folders and subfolders. All the folders have security permissions, so you can control them by your tenants or by your departments. And there's also within each folder, there's permissions at the report level. So just because they have access to a folder doesn't mean they have to have access to every report. You see the little gold star checked here? That is sort of like a bookmarking system. It puts it right in their favorite report folder so they can quickly get to the ones they want. And every user also has a private folder where they can save their own dashboards and reports so that they don't have to worry about cluttering up the public library. A couple things they can do: they can click on a report, run it really quickly. All reports could have that kind of prompting system, parameterized filtering, where they can pick a prompt value to add in that report or bring back the report like that. And there's an action menu in this library where they can schedule, they can, if they have permission, edit, move, copy. But these are all permission oriented based on what rights you give them. So your typical view only users will only be able to make a copy, but they'll never be able to edit, move, or delete. So a lot of things to do in this library. You can even search and find things quickly. Now I'm going to jump into the builder because that's really where the power is, and that's somebody in your organization is going to be responsible for building these reports, and that could be one department or it could be decentralized. But in the builder, this is where anyone with, you don't have to have technical skills or knowledge of SQL. Of course, it helps, and you'll see how that helps. But the concept is, and we'll talk about this when we look at the architect, but you're going to build a semantic layer on your database. We call it a Yurbi app. And you'll notice that the first thing I do is select an app. So in your environment, you could have multiple data sources connected to Yurbi. Each user, you can explicitly define if they can build or only view from that data source. You'll notice that I'm the admin. I can build from a lot of data sources. I've got a lot of stuff here. I'm going to pop down to this sample database. But Yurbi is very data agnostic. If I was connected to a help desk, like our CA service desk integration, you'll see that we have all the things like incidents and problems and requests and change orders all mapped out, where a user just says, I'd like to do a report on the request out of my help desk. And you'll see that they'll get a checklist structure that's very detailed and involved with many subfolders on exactly what they want to report on. Let's go back and pick a different one. Let's say it was an ERP system, like my sample example. The report types are a lot smaller. Maybe I want to do a human resources report. And you'll see I have a much more simplified tree. So in our model, you can build as many of these semantic layers as you want, and you might have a big database where you want to take a slice of that database and make it accessible to the HR team. You might want to take another slice and only have sales data in it. And you might have your internal report builder team have access to everything. So every one of those teams could have their own personalized Yurbi app, in essence, to do their reporting. Now, once they select their app and their report type, you'll notice that they have access to all these fields that you give them permission to report on. So they don't have access to the entire database, just what you want them to report on. And reporting is really simple. You just simply select what you want to see in your report. I'm going to pick a couple fields here. And you'll notice as I'm picking these fields, Yurbi is actually giving me a preview of how my data set looks with a live set of data from your database. Now what we're doing is we're limiting this to the to just 50 rows. So we're not killing your database. You might have a humongous database, but we're just going to bring back 50 rows to show the builder, what's in these fields that they're picking. And behind the scenes, Yurbi is creating the SQL query. It's doing all the security constraints and things like that to protect the data. Once a user sees the data set, they could go in via options on that particular card, add criteria and formulas. For example, if I want to restrict my list to just the employees under 50, I can come into my criteria builder and I can say, bring me back everything that is less than 50 in this case. Um, you'll see that we're going to do a little lookup, give you a checklist. Again, this is security driven. You're only going to see items in your pick list that you have permission to see. And now you'll see I've got that criteria reflected and my data set has been refreshed. Let's say I wanted to not have a detailed report, but I want to aggregate or count up my employees. You'll see the formula builder has out of the box function types based on your database platform that we're reporting from. But I could also do really powerful things like reference other fields in the data set, kind of like you do in Excel. I can translate data. I could do a whole bunch of stuff here. So now let's change the label of this to be number of employees because I'm doing a count. Let's add a sort order just to make our sort look a little bit better in this data set. And let's hide this employee age. Let's keep the restriction, but we'll just turn off visibility. And those are some of the common things that you do when you're building a Yurbi report. And you'll see I just took that raw data set into something that's a little bit more usable. And I could then pop it into a pivot table if I add another dimension, or I can go straight into a visualization as you kind of saw really quickly from the dashboard example, and maybe turn this into a column chart, and I'll just accept all the defaults for this compressed demo. But there's a lot of things I could do in this chart wizard. So that's the concept of converting raw data into a visualization without having to write any code. And when I save this, again, I can give it a specific group or tenant, make it available to all my users and let that data security kick in. And I have all sorts of things. I can allow it to be public view, make it anonymous, allow it to be embeddable. I won't even bother giving it a name or a description, but you'll see I have the ability to save it in that public library space or in my own private space as a work in progress that I'll come back and continue to work on. So that's that concept of the building environment. And let's talk about how we get so that once we have builders in our organization doing this, then you could build dashboards and do all those things. Let's talk about how we get this Yurbi app, because that's going to be the first thing you want to, that's really the most important thing about Yurbi, and it is the technical piece where your technical team, or you can leverage our technical team, has to build. Now, I'm going to pop into the admin. I'm moving quickly here just because of the time. Definitely, if there's questions, please put those in, and I'll try to leave some time to answer those. The first thing you would do when you install Yurbi on your server, pop into this thing we call app databases. This is where you register the connection between Yurbi and your database, what we call registering an app. And you'll see you can register any kind of SQL or Oracle, all those databases we talked about. You can import data. We have the premium apps for our CA and ServiceNow and BMC customers. And if I were to expand one of these registrations, all we're looking for is a read-only database user ID and password. And then, of course, you would select the right driver for your database and the right platform for your database. Once you do that and test connection, that means Yurbi's talking to your database, and that's the only thing that ever talks to your database is the Yurbi server. We're the only thing that has that direct the connection. Again, you can repeat this process and build as many of these Yurbi apps as needed, even on the same database. Step two is you go into this architect, and this is really where the magic kind of happens. What you're going to build here is a bridge to translate your raw data into user terminology. So let's look at that Yurbi app that we were working on before and see what's behind the covers. Here are the report types, if you remember, and I can add as many of those as I want. If I click on that human resources report type that we were working on, here's that report tree that you saw the builder had. But what's behind this report tree is somebody brought in the database tables and built the relationship between these database tables so that Yurbi can dynamically build that SQL query. So when we connect to your database, we're going to have access to every SQL table and every SQL view in your database. Once we bring in that table, we'll have access to every field and every data type in that table. And then the last step is what we're going to do is tell Yurbi how these tables are related. That's going to be this middle icon, and that's going to be, whatever you're joining in is whatever the relationship. Doesn't have to match up necessarily with the, if you have legacy databases. This is an application level schema, so you could do a lot of power there in terms of additional join filters to do exactly what you need from a data perspective. But once you have this, you just simply add the fields you want into this report tree, and that's what users are going to have to be able to report from. As you add these fields, it's not just a raw field, but let's take that employee age that we took a look at in the builder. If I edit that field, you'll see I'm actually doing a SQL function on this field. So as you need to translate information, like maybe you have ones and zeros in your database, or you have a timestamp and you only want the day of the month, or the month of the year, or something like that. I can do all sorts of case statements and SQL functions and pretty much get whatever I need for my end users to have direct access to. So that's the concept. In a nutshell, you connect to your databases, you build what we call a Yurbi app or a semantic layer. You then provision users to build. They build their reports, save them in the library, and then you could build dashboards from those. And then there's a lot of bells and whistles that we did not cover in this compressed demo behind that. Let's take a peek at the admin panel really quickly, and I'll show you a couple things that's specific to that OEM use case or that multi-tenant use case. First thing is audit. Because we are a seamless platform, we're auditing everything that takes place. This is not where you build a report and toss over the fence and hope someone uses it. You're going to know, look at this, report execution. You're going to know who's running reports. You can also track who's creating and modifying and deleting, who's exporting your data. You talk about data governance, you can track who's exporting and printing reports. And all this data that we collect, we actually give you a nice little Yurbi app. If I pop back in the builder here and look at my apps, I got an app down here called Yurbi v10. Really should change to Yurbi v11 any day here, but you'll see that I could do all sorts of audits on what's taking place in Yurbi the same way you do against your databases. So lots of power in terms of how you can do auditing. Last thing I want to cover before I open up the Q&A is to take a look at that data security, that multi-tenant security. Let's first look at how we provision a user really quickly. Again, these are things that you can do through the interface. Our software use case, they would use our API to automatically provision this, but they would create a user ID, first name, last name. I mentioned multi-tenant. Users can have their own individual language for Yurbi, their own time zone, PIN and Windows authentication for those internal organizations using Active Directory. You would assign them a group. So in the OEM space, that would be your tenants. In the internal business use cases, will probably be your departments. And then the last thing you would do is grant them permission to that semantic layer. And they can be builders, agents, and you'll notice each semantic layer has unique permissions. So somebody can view from one database and build from another. So there's a lot of different use cases there. The last step is that data security, and this will control exactly what permissions they have, what data they see. So you can build robust data constraints across all your semantic layers and report types. This would be where you would put your tenant ID equal, or in this case, I've got a whole bunch of constraints across multiple different data types. And then you assign that to a specific group or tenant. In this case, I'm going to assign it to myself. Even though I'm a super user, I can constrain myself. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this on. And you'll see that advantage of being a seamless platform. I don't have to log off and log back on and push anything to the server. Every call I make to the API is now going to have that security turned on. So as I go back to that very initial dashboard that we looked at, you'll be able to see that now, if you remember, there were 3 series of data on that particular dashboard. Now, as this dashboard loads in, same dashboard, but now my charts and my data grids and my drill downs and everything only reflect this one tenant or this one department. And that's sort of the speed and power of Yurbi. All right, I'm hitting the clock here, so let's go ahead and open it up to some Q&A. Take a look at what we have from a Q&A perspective. Okay, that did go a little long. I'm bumping right up against 30 minutes, but got some time for a couple of quick questions. I go a little bit over, but I do want to respect your time. Let's just go in order here. Got a couple questions. First, can Yurbi be white label? Great question, and absolutely yes. One of the key things that I mentioned is Yurbi. The front end is 100% HTML5 and JavaScript, just web based. And we give you on the server two specific files. One called custom.js. That's where you can put in your own JavaScript. Not just you can customize it. You can hide buttons. So, for example, on if you didn't want to print and export, you could hide those as an example. We also include a custom CSS file. That's for style sheet changes. So that's where you can change your fonts and your colors and the logos and all those sorts of things. So we do support full branding and white label. And that's not just for partners, but also internally. We want you, if you're an internal business use case, to put your business logo on it and make it your own product and not just have it be Yurbi. That way, I mean, believe me, user adoption is actually increased when they see it as an internal product versus a third party type of product. So, great question on that. Next question, output types. So we got a question about on the export, what type of output types do we have? So if I take a look here, you'll see that now this is an image file. So any of our images or dashboards will go out as a PNG. They can download that, put in the Word document, PowerPoint document, things like that. But that's an image file. Any of our data tables, so this is a data table. Let's click that export again. You'll see it'll change, and you'll see the export includes Excel, PDF, and CSV. So those are our output types. And then also in the scheduler on your data tables, you can also send the email as inline HTML. I see a follow-up question. On the PDF, yes, you can put in headers and footers. Now that's a server-based config today. You can't do it through the interface. But on our server, we have a little file where you can set up a header with a logo and a title, and you can leverage some dynamic aspects of the. If I were to go into the library and look at the report description and things like that, there's tokens that I could put into the header and footer. But what you see on the screen is what you're going to get in that export. So a common thing you see with Europe is people ask, can we do the pixel perfect type reports? That's not what we focus on, like a Crystal Reports where you lay out the form. Our approach to that would be through the API where you can get a secure data set and you could bind that to any sort of web page or display component or whatever for those custom type of things if you needed to print a receipt or have a certificate or a form or something like that. So great question on that. I'm right. I want to respect your time. I know we responded to a couple of questions on text. We got them all. We'll respond to you directly and answer your question. And also, you'll get the replay of this. So, as I went a little bit fast, you'll also get a replay link where you can go back and review. And then I'll reach out to you directly. If you do have any questions, you can definitely reply back to me, david.ferguson at 5000fish.com. But look for the email to come out with the replay link as well and any questions that we missed. Thanks for your time and attention. I hope you saw where Yurbi was worth further research. I'd love to do a live demo with you and your team. The next step could also be starting a trial, and you can access all of that straight from our website. If I go to yurbi.com, you'll see I saw a question about pricing. I can talk to you separately about that, but you'll see pricing right here. We're very transparent with our pricing, and we also do have special pricing for OEM and larger enterprise use cases. But under resources, you'll see start a trial right there where you can do a self-service trial. But we want you to work with us too. We'll help you with the trial, help you get your Yurbi app going. All right, I'm still going long, so I want to appreciate you. Thank you for your time, and I'll talk to you soon.